In assignment 1.4b, counting how many, you have two tasks. And the first is to make a visual showing how many men were on the Titanic. Of the total population, how many perished and how many survived. And can you further break down the dead/survivor data by sex? So how many men survived versus women. Then I ask you to create a visualization that shows a histogram showing the distribution of the ages of men who perished on the Titanic. So you have a couple of interesting challenges where you get to flex some of your Tableau skill. So the first thing we need to do is connect to our data set. And that was an Excel file. And that's the, I'm sorry, it was not an Excel file, it's a CSV file. Titanic list, and open. And I see that there's a number of data points in this data set, including survived, 1 or 0. So in this case, what the table has done, or how this table's been marked, is survivors have been marked with a 1, and people who perished were marked with a 0. This is an important detail to keep in mind. We have their ages, and we have their sexes. So for this question, we have all of the material we need in each of these columns. So, how do we get started? Well, first we go to sheet 1. And remember, the first thing we're doing is looking for a chart that shows or compares survival perished versus survived between men and women. And so we know that, what do we have as far as dimensions? Boat, cabin, embarked, home, destination, name. We do have sex, so we can, here, we know we have sex, and we want to filter by sex, but let's see if we can put that in columns. And then what we can do is have measures, and we know that survived is a measure. And we know that in rows, we add that to rows. So we know who survived. But the other question we had is disaggregated by sexes. Who didn't survive? Who perished? Now, why do I know these numbers are accurate? Because all people who survived or perished were in the same column. But if you remember, each one was marked with a 1 or a 0. And so if I look for the total of the sum of those columns, so of the values inside those columns, since those who perish added to 0 and those who survived added to 1, the total is actually reflecting the number who survived. So how do we make a separate column for those who perished based on those who are 0? Well, there's a few ways you can do it, and I'll show one. I can actually go to Analysis up on the menu bar and create a calculated field. And in my calculated field, what I can do is I can call this field perished. And all I would need to do there, right, is I take the number of records minus survived, because that will sum the sum of survived, and I can also put perished in here. Now I could also line them up side by side, and here you go. So in this case, 339 females survived, 27 females perished. 682 males perished and 161 survived. Now, one thing I might want to add in my analytics here is totals. And what I want are, in this case, row grand totals. And so the question is, when I have 809 here perished and 500, does that equal the number of records that I have? The other thing we'll want to do with these numbers change data type. We want number whole. Perished. We want to make sure it's number whole. Okay. Now, $139. Okay, so our first assignment part of this assignment was to make a visual showing of the total population, how many perished and how many survived, and can I further break it down, dead survivor by sex, which we did. And so that's image 1. And so we can name this people, or we can just say on the Royal Mail ship Titanic. By sex. Okay. Now what we might also want to do is, instead of being able to hold our mouse over these tool tips here, we may want to label these bars and show our data. And there I'll just mark label and always show. So the numbers can show here. And so we have the number of women, men. Now we needed another visualization. And that visualization wanted us to create a histogram showing the distribution of the ages of men who perished on the Titanic. And that's a separate visualization on another sheet. So we go to sheet 2, and we know we're making a histogram, right? We're making a histogram, right, of the distribution of ages of the men who perished on the Titanic. So the first thing we have to do is we're going to age. Make a histogram. So we know that the ages are binned, and here's the count. And now we have to disaggregate it by the number of ages of men, the distribution of ages of men who perished. We have one null, so let's just filter that out. Okay. So how do we do this? Well, we need two filters. We need a filter by sex. And if I pull that over, we want male. Okay. And now we need to also filter, you need those who perished. And we want the sums and the range of values. So that's the count of people. So here we'll want to say number of men who perished. And this is the age distribution. Now we also see that the bins, the count of people at that age, so the bins here are basically 5. So we can check our bins of our histogram. So if we check the bins of our histogram, we go to age and bin, and then we check the bins. So we edit each bin. So the size of bin is 4.92. Looks pretty close. 5 and see. It's about 5. We have one person at the 80 bin, 80 to 85. We have no one there. So we do have that one outlier at age 80. We can see here, and we can say 10, but I think this will be good for binning. We want to see by 5, especially when we're looking or considering the number of children. We can also go like this. And this will show the numbers, right? The numbers of people at each age group. And we might want to adjust the color a bit. So in the past we've used that gray color, and we've also had a boundary or a border. So let's make the border black. There we go. So here what we have is a histogram showing this division. There's this gap here. But we can see that the real high numbers of men who perished, the age groups that perished in the greatest frequency, were those between the ages of 20 and 40. And so now I have these two visualizations, and now I can say this is the age distribution of men who perished on the RMS Titanic. And if we're thinking that this gap is too much and we could bin it differently, we might bin it. We could try binning it by 10 and seeing 10 is the number. No one really likes that. So, our bins are here, and our image is created. Now we want to put them both together. We do that by creating a dashboard. That's one way. We could have them side by side. That doesn't quite work that way, so we want to maybe do then is like that. And so we can port this image out. We go to the dashboard and export image. And we call this a assignment 1.4b. Now I've made my assignment 1.4b image. And it looks like this. So I've created two simple visuals, being able to show these data. And now you have a few techniques that you've exercised. In case you struggle a little bit on these exercises, now hopefully these suggestions set you back on the right path.